This is your moment. Don't
It up 10 times now. So let's get started.
do it again. That was not great. Just this one's gonna be magic, Mike. Just
Now everybody's taking pictures. Now
magic, Mike. No pressure. Let's go, Mike.
And we are going to continue our exciting conversation. I think we have.
All right, that sucked. They're exciting conversation. What was that? Start over. Cut.
Oh my God! Do you see what I have to put up with?
All right, you know what? I'm out of here.
Yeah, you're out.
I am out. No, you stay.
No,
I'm leaving the room because I'm clearly living in your head now.
Let's boldly go.
We have a familiar face. We have Luke Larson, who's joined us again. We've talked about his journey at Axon, former president. And today we're also joined by the current president, Josh Isner. And I think if you've watched the last Luke episode, he really set it up well to bring Josh into this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Batman and Robin, or who was it in Pulp Fiction with the Gimp? I don't remember his partner, but it's one of these dynamic duo combinations.
You know, looking across at you and Mike, it's like Michael Jackson and Macaulay Culkin. That's the vibe I'm getting here.
Okay, so Rick, where did we leave off on the last episode?
I don't know. Look, you guys gave me a lot of shit about like dressing up in costumes, and I don't know if this was like forced against your consent or not, but you guys have bought into this. I mean, Luke showed up as was it King Triton or Neptune at the holiday party? Game of Thrones was epic for our company kickoff.
You were right about. There's been a few that have sounded insane at the time that have worked out very well. Giving away stuffed animals at ICP is at the top of that list.
Brilliant.
I thought that was one of the top 10 dumb ideas I've ever heard. And it's like you just see all these people at the airport walking around the trade show with these huge like Axon, like essentially like ads that they're just carrying around. Like evidence.com never forgets with the elephants.
It was 2012.
Yeah.
And I had this crazy idea that, hey, let's give away big stuffed animals. Like so big they can't put it in a bag. I want every police chief to feel like they just won the prize at the state fair, and it'll have our logo on there. And we chose elephants because we're like, it'll be unique, and elephants never forget. What a great thing. And then like 2 weeks before, somebody's like, there's an election coming up and we have elephants. People might think this is a political statement. I'm like, oh my God. But like nobody... That
then there was like a shipping issue. I forget what it was, but like we had to transport all of them by car across the country.
There's always an issue.
The show.
There's always an issue. And
we ran out that year. It was like a riot. I have never seen police chiefs riot, but we nearly lost control. They were upset when we ran out.
There's one picture seared into my brain, and this is a guy you should have on this podcast. Yuri just sleeping. There's a bed of elephants like in the room, and you just see Yuri sunken in, passed out cold on top of him, taking a nap.
Here's the founder and CEO of this company, and every year it's the same process. Marketing comes to Rick. Now you would think he would not get involved in these details. Marketing comes to Rick like, here's the stuffed animal for IECP. That's the largest police conference that we go to. And every year, Rick is intimately involved. And I could do it. They should just come to me first. And every year, Rick says what?
Make it bigger.
Make it bigger.
Well, they
every
try to
single
save it
year.
They're like, oh, it's a pain to move them and they do shipping and blah, blah, blah. So every year they bring me a little dog. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Make it bigger. And one cool story on the dog, is was it last year or the year before? The state police colonel comes in and brings his wife, and she gets the dog, whatever we had that year. And she's not emotional, but she was pretty moved by it. She goes, hey, I just want to let you know how important these stuffed animals are to me. She goes, I've been coming with my husband to these ICP conferences for a while. She said, I got one of your stuffed animals, gave it to my daughter, and now I'm back again because my daughter has had a baby and I'm giving it to my granddaughter. And then they sent you and I a picture of the stuffed animals with the daughter and the granddaughter. That was pretty cool.
That was cool.
Well, so there was the elephants, and then the other thing you mentioned, the costumes at our big company kickoff, another home run. Like people get into it, they get excited. It kind of builds the culture and teamwork. It's we get all our sales curmudgeons complaining like, I gotta like pack a bag and bring in like 2 costumes from for the week, and it takes up all the room in my suitcase. But once they get there, it's pretty awesome.
Well, it'd be easy to suck. Like it's a big company, like company kickoff meeting, blah blah blah. But when you show up, it's like a rock concert or the Electric Daisy Carnival. Like it's Comic-Con. Like people are having a good time.
Oh yeah.
And by the way, that security garage door in the office could have been just as big a hit. And it wasn't, but it could have been.
And people, and Josh, you're right. Like people, I was too in the beginning. I was like, I'm not dressing up. Why am I dressing up to come to this thing? And then you get there and you're like, oh, I get it. And now it's just, so I'm sure new employees walk into this unless you're like, sort of like, but now when you get there,
we had a blow up. I think it was last year or the year before because we made it mandatory. And we had
got in a very public Slack fight with a couple employees about it. Kind of regret it.
They were new and they were
memorable.
Why are you forcing me to do this? And Josh, to his credit, drew a line in the sand. He's like, this is just how it is.
The hard part is like the themes are so broad. You could have the theme that year was music. You could have a Post-it with a musical note on your shirt, and it would be
concert
qualifiers,
T-shirt.
a costume, and there's from time to time concerns about is this a safe place to work and so forth. One of the biggest things I've learned in 16 years here, 17 years, is Axon is not for everyone. No. Like it's just not, and we should embrace that. It's just we know what we do here. Everybody who's here and thrives here loves it and never wants to leave. But it's not a company where everyone's going to love it, and we gotta, we try to be very vocal about that on the front end of the interview process, so that people who don't think this is the right place for them will self-select out.
And I do have to say, look, we got 4 white guys here, like joking around, etc. I think it's also we have taken diversity and inclusion very seriously, but in a way where it's like, look, everybody's welcome here. If you are a flaming far right politically leaning person, you're welcome here. If you are the same on the left, you're welcome here. But the thing is, you gotta have some personality too. This is a place where we're real people. We are not going to neuter the place to where it is so denuded of any human interaction that's interesting or humorous that it's not. We're going to have fun together, and that's not for everybody.
As long as the far right and far left person both know when they come to work that we just don't talk about politics.
Yeah, you leave that stuff at the door.
100%.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I appreciate about Josh. I mean, as much Luke sort of drove the culture here and started, and we talked about that in a prior episode, and the values, one of them being expect candor, and then Josh is taking it further, and saying that to like when there's been challenges or complaints, hey, not everybody belongs here. I'm not talking about we have a very, very, very diverse team.
Yeah.
But this is not for everybody.
Yeah.
And we make products for law enforcement.
What we mean by that is look, you're just, if you want work to be your political outlet to spew all of your beliefs, this isn't the right place for you. If you don't want to be coached hard, this isn't necessarily the right place for you. If you come to work in your perfect environment that you envision in your mind is someone is telling you what to do with every hour of your day and making sure that they're all over you this isn't going to be a place that makes you happy. This is a non-structured, not rigid, very flexible environment, and that's not for everyone. And so, we are a company that enthusiastically supports the police and wants to make policing better and safer, just like the police do. But if you come to work and you can't get behind the police, this is going to be a hard place for you. And that's just.
And I hold you two guys up as the example of initiative. Nobody asked you guys to step in and challenge the sacred cows the way you did, and that's why you both rose, very quickly through the company. And I hold that up to younger people, hey, what can I do to succeed? It's look, you see a problem, you have the initiative, you go solve it. Now you got to play well with others, and you've got to, we have a collegial atmosphere.
Yep.
But we need people with the initiative to go get things done.
Yeah, the one thing so I haven't been with the company for a few years, so I'm coming in, and it literally feels like I'm coming home to be sitting here with all 3 of you guys. But one thing that I loved about Axon is we were playing to win. We had a high performance culture, but we also had a lot of fun. Some of my best memories are just the shenanigans that we did, and when times are hard. Actually, Rick, one moment we had this really bad incident. And we had made a mistake, and the CFO and the general counsel were kind of in the middle of it. And I was thinking, oh man, he's gonna chew these guys out. And you just made this kind of lighthearted joke, hey, we'll learn from it, we get better, and it totally diffused the situation. It was a pretty awesome moment just to be okay, this is hard, but we're gonna have fun while we're doing it,
Well, and as we get bigger, I think it's really important we encourage people to take risks, and it's getting harder and harder because you got to walk the walk, right? When things go wrong, if you try something, it's well intentioned and it's well considered, and it fails, like my garage door in the office, that's going to be okay. We want people to take risks and to push and innovate and try new things. And so, yeah, when people do fail. Now, look, if you do something malicious, you're gone. Something unethical, you're out. Something really stupid that, didn't have good purpose, it's not going to go well for you. But if you tried something that was stretching the bounds of the possible and you took a risk and it didn't pay off, I want to protect those people and cherish them and celebrate them so other people see that like, hey, it's okay to take risks.
I mean, now 5,000 people in this company, thereabouts. Like, how do you make sure we can continue to challenge those sacred cows? I mean, it's a little bit different when you guys, a smaller company, startup culture, which we try to maintain, but like, how do you do it today?
It's hard, man. It's the thing I worry most about is we get so big that people just fall into line and they think their job is to agree with everybody and not be candid and not fix problems unless it's in their very narrow alley. So a lot of what we're doing now at Axon is trying to figure out how to flatten out the organization and give creative people more room to run with less meetings, less micromanagement, more autonomy. And I think it's going pretty well, but it starts with just who we hire at the company. And that's the thing we spend the most time on as managers is like, we got to make sure every team in history that's been the best team, they've had one thing in common. They've had the best players. And so for us, it's like no matter how good or bad our managers are, our leadership is at the company, if we don't have the best players, we're never going to win. And so that's really important.
Yeah, I got to share as well. Like, you got to celebrate life and make it fun. Like, one of my favorite moments was, Luke, when I took you up. I'd been sort of probing around a little bit to make sure that you actually thought Teslas were cool cars. But I was like, hey, let's go tour the Tesla factory, and took you up to Fremont, and that was really cool, seeing all the big robots and all that. And then, I really love that moment. All right, Luke, pick out what you want. Like,
yeah,
I want to thank you for all the work you've done.
That was a pretty cool moment. So Rick and Josh, we flew up to, and I think the guys that like, this is a board meeting or interview or something in San Francisco. So we flew into San Francisco, and then instead of going to like a conference, we actually went to the Tesla factory. One of our executives had worked at Tesla, got us this behind the scenes tour. It was a super cool moment, and I got to pick out the most loaded, Tesla. Got a custom Axon license plate, which I still have. Josh is trying to wrestle it away from me, and that was a really cool life moment. We talked a little bit about recruiting, and one of it's actually super cool to be here in the Boston office, and I feel like I'm actually not a huge Boston fan. I'm more of a West Coast guy, but in Boston, Rick went to school here, so did Josh. And so coming back to Boston, we had actually done a lot of recruiting here. So got some great schools in Boston, Harvard, MIT. And so one of my favorite memories is me and Josh and our head of HR at the time, Marcy Rigoni. We came and we did a recruiting trip at Harvard and MIT. And it was actually hard for us to get on campus because they're pretty strict about what employers they have come in and all this stuff. So we show up, and we're at MIT, and we're interviewing these guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, like the first, we have like 14 interview spots, and the first 13 go well. Smart kids, obviously, they probably could help the company. The 14th person is a really nice guy and super smart, but he was a Chinese citizen, so he could not work for Axon. That's like, we're a defense contractor. It's a very bright line there. Couldn't have Chinese citizens working. So he was interviewing, though, so we figured we might as well interview him. And Luke, we were doing these, like, one of the parts of the interview was like this pattern recognition visual puzzle. And Luke just invents his own for this interview. And he's like, what? He draws like two random shapes. And he's like, what shape comes next? And this is just, he has no idea what comes next. And this kid looks at it for like 10 minutes. And then he comes up with the most logical, like perfect answer for the next shape in the sequence, which just shocked us. Right? And Marcy's got her head down, like shaking her head. Me and Luke are just having fun with this. And then the kid's like, damn, like this was the best interview of all. And couldn't hire him.
It was like Goodwill Hunting. The guy had a beautiful mind. We didn't know
like
any other
things. Yeah.
And we couldn't hire him.
Well, actually, speaking about, again, memorable gifts, like relationships matter. I think moments matter a lot too. Getting you the car. I also am a believer in giving people cash because there's something different. It's if like $10,000 shows up in your bank account, it's like, okay, cool, you know. But if somebody gives you 10 grand in cash, like that's not something that happens every day. So over the years, we've had multiple times where, but as a public company, it's kind of a pain in the ass because, you know, I think we've even had like some reporters accuse us of like trying to skip the, you know, taxes or whatever. Like, oh, the company gives out cash to people. Yes, hell yeah, we do. And I know you guys had. Do you have a favorite?
We true
moment?
up their taxes just to set the record straight on that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, Rick would do these kind of over the top gestures to folks, and it really makes a meaningful difference because it was, you know, essentially almost like half of their salary in one event, whether that be a car or a cash bonus. And what it does is it creates a sense of like it's a once in a lifetime moment for that person, and it really endears loyalty, and the person feels seen and appreciated. It's really cool, and we've got, you know, there's hundreds of people that have had moments like that at Axon. One in particular that sticks out. We had we talked about getting Axon to profitability, and we had this great leader in FP&A, a guy named
finance.
Bobra. He was on our finance team. Wonderful, wonderful guy. And he was in the trenches helping us figure out, you know, how do we make this fairly complex business, you know, kind of pencil out and be profitable over time. And so as we were going through that journey, we're like, and he actually kind of stepped in and was like a CFO for a while when we were going through our CFO transition.
Interim CFO for a few weeks.
And so in like appreciation for him, we took him out to lunch.
Rick was like, hey, let's take Arvind out to lunch. And he had Rick's big on like, he likes, like he said, the moments in life, like a surprise, a very well orchestrated thing. So he gets the waitress to bring a tray over before Arvind gets here. Rick loads it up with cash. And this guy worked 120 hours a week for 2 months. Our CFO at the time got hit by a car on his bike, and so he couldn't sign our financial things. And then the interim CFO didn't work out great, and so Arvind stepped in and it just willed his way to this. So it was very noteworthy as someone who deserved some special compensation. So Rick loads this tray up with a bunch of cash and then covers it with a napkin. Says, okay, when we're going to order our food, and then when our food is coming out, the first tray that should get here should be the cash. Mm-hmm. The meeting started, we're just chit-chatting in the meeting. We asked Arvind to come out to breakfast with us. And finally, the food is up, so the waitress starts bringing over the tray of cash. And then she puts it on the table. Rick hasn't said a word yet. She pulls it back. Rick still hasn't said a word yet. And Arvind's just looking at this tray of cash. And Rick just looks at Arvind with like the most vacant stare I've ever seen. And he goes, I'm sorry, your name is escaping me.
He will remember that moment for the rest of his life.
We're literally giving him a ton of money in cash. Rick doesn't know his name. And
I knew it.
And Arvind goes, if you're going to give me this money, you can call me whatever you want. In
Rick's defense, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I think it was more of like a brain fart type moment.
Yes.
But it didn't play well in the moment.
That is a perfect Rick story, though, for sure.
That another name, remember the other name for getting one when the TSR guys came over from the UK? And it was a we were acquiring our distributor there. Similar to dynamics to what we talked about before. We want to go direct. But these folks had been with us from the very, very beginning.
Well, actually, so we're over in the Rick he said, hey, I want you to go over there with the other exec. I wasn't exec. I was like Mr. Nobody. And he said, hey, I want you to go over there and give me the ground truth. I think this other guy might be like fluffing it. So we go over there and we do a couple days. And I had come to the same assessment, which is like, these aren't the right guys. And they're great guys. They were actually great partners for us. They were the wrong people for our Axon growth. So we were on a call with me and Rick and this other executive. And I said, hey, these are the wrong guys. We need to move off of them and go to this other direction. And this is actually after Josh had done this domestically. And so we have this pretty tense meeting. not quite as intense as the one you had, but it was a pretty intense meeting. And me and this other guy, we're in the UK, so we're sitting next to each other, and then we have this thing, and he's furious with me because I said we should go direct, and he's like, you didn't run that by me, blah blah blah. And I was like, well, he asked me Rick asked me what we should do. I'm not going to lie to him. So anyway, we get to the airport, and I'm like, I can't wait to just plug into my 8-hour seat and zone out and not have to deal with this guy.
I forgot about that.
We're sitting right next to each other for 8 hours. So then this guy pulls out his laptop and he's acting like he's working. I'm like, all right, motherfucker, you want to play that game? So I pull out my laptop. We're just like, it was crazy. So anyway,
so he's flying to Axon to meet with Rick to talk about the fact that we want to go direct. And what we had agreed on was we were going to acquire their business as part of this because they had put a lot of sweat equity into it. They had built kind of in the UK, there's a lot of procedural stuff that has to happen when you sell weapons to the government there. So he had done.
And there was a long story we're not going to cover today where one of the partners lost his life and
Absolutely.
The right thing to do was to buy the business, even though we could have just gone around it.
So we're in a tense negotiation of like what we want. It was nice of Rick to want to acquire the business. Right. That didn't mean he was going to pay whatever to get it, right? There was a negotiation.
We've known these 15 years.
Worked with these Rick's first partner in the UK. So let's just say the guy's name was like John. He keeps calling him Jim. Like totally wrong name. And it turned out it was like Rick had just thought he was calling him the right name, but the way it was playing out was like a Rain Man type negotiation technique because the guy kept like every time he kept talking, Rick be like, "Okay, Jim, thanks for your thoughts." He just came off as the hardest. This was like Donald Trump negotiating against somebody here, and it was incredible. And then Rick got his way, and John was Jim from there on out.
Well, in fairness, I actually don't remember that scene, but it wasn't one of the original founders of the business.
It wasn't.
It was one of the guys they brought in.
Correct.
Incredible. Right.
Great negotiating.
And the Arvin story, we talked about it before on previous podcasts that made the Reuters story and how just another vector for attack. And I don't know, Josh probably knows the numbers better, but every time those come out, that inspires more loyalty. And I think our recruitment number.
People apply.
Talk about the Reuters thing.
The best is this guy, this guy was the type of person, if you read their resume, you could have written exactly what they were going to write about Axon. Like all the bad stuff about working with the police and use of force and surveillance and
tattoos. They tase interns.
And the employees get tased if they want to. It was like supposed to be this explosive story about how dysfunctional our company was and how unethical he thought the company was. Turned out he writes this story. Some of our own employees are like, did our PR team place this story? Because our applications are going through the roof after everybody read about all the stuff we do as a company. But touche to him, he did use the picture of me at the NASDAQ as the kind of cover picture, that was tough.
And I think that same one of the articles that they also wrote, we had just accomplished something pretty big, sort of sales-wise, and it really helped the company financially. And there was a team that probably 10, 11, 12 of us. And you said, hey, Mike, let's do something special for the team to reward them. Now, they got paid, this meant more. And that Rick said, let's recognize the team. So you paid for a private jet.
No, I had bought a private jet after giving these guys the life advice to not buy a private jet.
Okay, I was trying to be gracious.
Just hold on. I got to show this. My father, who you all know well, on his deathbed, literally as my dad is about to die, he's like, Rick, you can afford it. You should buy a jet. And so I literally, he got in my head, and 6 months later, I bought a Gulfstream G5. Sold it 6 months later, remembered why I hated all that.
So in between that time on the
private jet.
On the G5. So we fly to Vegas, and then your executive assistant had rented SUV,
the Beast,
to take us around. Josh was on the trip. We all pile in, and again, these are a number of the folks there are obviously never been on a private jet, never probably be on a private jet again.
Pam Peterson is on this trip.
Yeah, It was like a random collection of people. Given that I forget what the project was, but it was cross-functional. essentially, like this was, I think we went to a show, like a Cirque type show.
Yeah.
We had a nice dinner. And that was kind of the trip.
That was it. Nothing wild and crazy.
Yeah.
No wild gambling stories, no drinking.
They took a picture of the Beast, which
literally
is this
called the Beast.
stretch limo that's like a Hummer. And
Summer stretch. Yep.
if we could do it again, we'd probably ask Rick's EA to pick one that didn't have a pole in the middle of the thing.
I thought it was handicap access.
That was a little awkward, but he's got the pictures of the pole in there and so forth.
The stripper pole.
Yeah.
That was the story. Rick took these people to Vegas with a bus with a stripper pole.
And if you look at the picture, like it is the tamest group.
This was like if you didn't have to worry about one group causing trouble in the history of Las Vegas, you just take a picture of this group and be like, "Yep, that's the one."
But it inspired loyalty. Like we were in it, and then like I'm sure people read that. Like I'd like to be invited on a trip like that. I'm like our CEO to really pay attention to me and reward me in that way. And like you did, like it was an incredible time.
So Luke, one of the things you sent in before this episode was this picture of some cash and a note from my dad. I'm curious what the story was.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about Rick's dad, Rick is a big charismatic guy, and his dad is like 10 times that. He was just larger than life figure, and had a couple just great kind of memories with him. But one was he had come out to the Phoenix Open, and I'm not exactly sure how this came together. I think you said, "Hey, if we're going out there, do you mind taking my dad?" And I said, "No problem." So I went and picked him up in a golf cart, and we showed him around. And then he needed to take a cab home, and so we get to the cab, and he's like, "Luke, I'm embarrassed. I don't have any cash." And so I said, "Phil, are you kidding me? No problem. Like, here's $20, and take this cab home." And I'm thinking, that's that, and great day on the course with Phil. Well, then the next day I walk into the office, and on my desk is a wad of cash with a note from Phil saying, "Thanks, Phil Smith." It was super cool and just kind of speaks to the type of guy he was. We also, speaking of private jets, Rick, we went up and saw the solar eclipse. So Rick took me and my kids, and Rick's kids are about the same age, and it was me, my kids, your kids, and your dad, and we flew up and we watched the solar eclipse in Beaverton, Oregon, I think. It was a really cool moment just to be up there and see the solar eclipse. And at the time, your dad was having some health issues, so it was kind of a great, he was in the moment where he was giving life advice, and it was really cool.
Well, I would tell you, I had the talk with him 2 days before. He had gotten a fatal diagnosis. His personal doctor called me, said, "Your dad has less than 2 weeks to live." And he was begging surgeons to operate on him. And the doctor said, "Look, you need to talk to him and get your dad to accept he's going to die." So I went and I met with him, and we cried, and it was like, "Dad, like, you're going to die." And he accepted it. I said, rather than getting surgery, let's have one last adventure. Let's go. I'd never seen a total solar eclipse. And so we took him. So this was emotional. This was the farewell tour for my dad.
And then he lived like 5 years longer.
Yeah, the punchline, he came back from I have been to every solar eclipse since then, except the one in Antarctica. Because it was magical. We came back that next day, and one of the surgeons called him back and said, "You know what? You're going to die anyways. We'll give it a try."
So I worked for Rick for 15 years. When we walked in, you saw Hans Moritz, Steve Tuttle, Clay Wynn. Josh has worked for him for 17 years. And I think part of the thing that
Hans Marrero, but it's
Hans Marrero.
I know, I struggle with names.
That's one of the great Luke Larsonisms, getting people's names wrong. I forgot all about that.
Hey, we're trying to dish on Rick right now.
Well, it's pretty good that he remembered his real last name.
Susan McNeese. Rick here. Luke used to call her Susan McNeechy.
Wait, the only reason he remember Hans's name is because he's out in the hallway. He just did something with him. That's the only reason he remembers his last name.
Yeah. So I'm not great with people's names, but so anyway, it was really cool that you kind of invited me into those personal moments, and I know you've done those with other folks. I think we've got a fun picture when I had my third daughter. My lovely wife were in the hospital, Scottsdale Shea. We should donate a wing to that.
Best hospital in the world.
Yeah, they do lobster biscuits.
Only hospital I've ever seen that has all single rooms.
Oh,
wow. So my wife and I are having this special moment with our young child, and Rick and Josh come in, and they got me this massive unicorn. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Where did you get that?
Rick got it, not me.
I have no idea.
Yeah. He's holding the baby. He's like, whose baby is that? I'm like, Rick, that you came to the delivery room,
We're not going to ask you.
Speaking of your dad, first conversation I ever had with him, I walk up, I say, Phil, nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. Congrats on all your success. And he goes, who are you? I go, I'm Josh. He goes, I've heard a lot about you, and it hasn't been great. And by the way, it looks like you shop at a Salvation Army. I was like, thanks, Phil. Well, see you later. Have a nice day.
I think Tom may have been sharing his insights about you and the leadership development program.
Incredible.
By the way, just to make sure we top that story when we came back from the eclipse, the surgeon operated on my dad on what was supposedly an inoperable condition. And they were done. It turned out it was like a miracle. He had this very rare, like 0.001% where, and it was a gallbladder infection with a tumor. They were able to just pop it out, and he was out 15 minutes later, and he got another like 6 years of life.
And you've heard us talk about your dad. We loved your dad, and we don't want to make light of somebody's twilight hours. But I do need to take a shot at you here, Rick. So Rick's dad is on death's door. He's going to die. He has a terminal diagnosis. And we've gone to see this beautiful solar eclipse together. And Rick comes in, he's talking to me and Josh, and he goes, guys, I'm going to cut my dad's
Right, he said,
you remember that?
He's still working on it.
No, I've signed up for cryonics, baby. Like,
not only have you signed up, you're thinking about doing a startup.
I am thinking about, I am committed to funding a startup in this space. I think Protect Life is really about protecting human consciousness. And so at the end of our days, I want to see the next phase of consciousness in the universe, but that's for another episode.
So obviously, people's dads play a big influence in their lives. And Josh, you lost your dad at a young age, which is actually something I think gave you that kind of fighting spirit. And if you look at presidents, there's a unusually large amount that didn't have their dads. They lost them at an early age, and not to get there's several of them. But talk a little bit about what was that like, and how has that been an inspiration for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously would have liked it the other way, but certainly when I was in high school, my dad passed away, and just like, hey, this is life. Like it was. It's interesting. You're just like, yeah, I understand now bad things happen in life. And like, it's a question of like, can't do anything about it, right? You just decide what you're going to do next. And that's one of the reasons I love the phrase next play. It's like, hey, where do we go from here? And what are we going to do? And yeah, it had a huge impact on me. No question about it. But frankly, like coming to Axon, my whole family's from Boston, drove out 2 weeks after graduating college and started at Taser then. It was certainly like one of my fondest parts about my early years of Axon was Luke kind of mentoring me. And like I still miss that today because I always got the feedback that was I fucking hated when he would share it because it was like, I just didn't want to hear it or whatever, but he was right like 95% of the time. And that made like not having, somebody at home, my mom was great and she raised me and I love her very much. But my dad was my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was the professional. And so not having that kind of thing at home, that made it like having Luke just be like, dude, you got to lose like 100 pounds. And like, you got to stop fucking talking to people like this. And you got to like, it just along the way, I certainly wouldn't have been in the position I am without Luke coaching me up those years.
Well, it was definitely a reciprocal like relationship. So I really appreciated the feedback that you gave me along the years as well. We had talked a little bit about getting the right people, and Rick had said, if somebody lies, cheats, or steals, that's the easy stuff. It's like we had a couple executives, and this happens at every company, do bad things. Those are easy. It's like binary, you're out. The tougher ones are where you have people that are great and the company's outgrown them, and they maybe have some of the values but not the right skills, and it gets into these really difficult situations where you have to say, how do we either get them into the right role or get them out, because we need the right people in the right seats? And that's an area where I think Josh really brings a lot of great attention and focus, is that idea of getting, not only hiring the right people, but getting the right people in the right seats for the right part of the growth phase.
Josh had to leave us.
I don't think you realize the impact that you had. Like literally just last week, people were talking, because you used to say it all the time too. Is it the right person, wrong seat? And like trying to figure out, or is it the wrong person? And like, this is the person we got to move on. Like you had a big impact on that as well when you were president.
Well, I'd like to say it was all altruistic, but there was a piece where in 2014, Rick came to me and he said, when we can edit this out if this isn't appropriate, but in 2015, Rick came to me and he said, Luke, I want you to be CEO of the company. Mm-hmm. And so I was in my 30s at the time, and I breathed Axon. And so talk about giving somebody a feather in their cap. And so for like 3 years, I was like, we're going to do it. We're going to build this company into something. And I really felt a lot of ownership over it. And so, that was an extremely big motivation to say, hey, how do we build, the right company that I should believe? And then we had a really tough moment because I'd actually felt like I had not only, we had built a great team, we were hitting all these goals, and I was giving my life to Axon. And then probably about 3 years into that, the board went to Rick and said, hey, we want you to stay. And this was like a pretty big blow to my ego because I had felt like I had done so much. Mm-hmm. And I was, when you're going through these items, there's a lot of emotion. And so it kind of felt like something had been taken away from me. And I was, questioning, like, am I a failure and all this? And I think it really speaks to the relationship that Rick and I have and built and still have today is, he kind of talked me off the ledge and said, hey, I'd like you to stay. This isn't necessarily about you. The company would like me to keep the reins. And, I ended up staying another 4 or 5 years, which was phenomenal. And during those 4 or 5 years, that's when the XSP happened. So it was great. But it was a really, you talk about, me building the culture. That was one of the motivations is I was thinking, oh, this is the company that I'm going to build, right?
Well, look, I'd actually tell you I felt terrible about that because you feel like you set an expectation, then you take it away. And then, as we went further down the road, during one of Luke's later reviews, I actually said, I think, the thing that convinced me to stay is founders have a magical ability, not because of anything of ourselves, but because you are the founder, you can push the company to take risks in ways that no one else can because, like, no offense to Luke, but like the board of directors relationship with a professional CEO is not the founder is different. And I was actually coaching Luke. I said, hey man, I'd set you up here and then the board asked me to stay. And actually since he reorganized the company in such a way I could focus on doing the founder things and he was running the company, but it was time, I think, for Luke is like, hey man, like you don't want to be second fiddle to me forever, like you should go be a founder. And so he began the transition to Josh.
Well, first of all, now that you gave the Michael Jackson Macaulay, I feel a lot safer that you moved on across the table from it. For some reason, it just feels a whole lot natural than you sitting right beside me.
I wanted to come, snuggle up with Luke over here, and the camera said it.
Yes, I know exactly why you moved. I often wonder this. Like, in prior episodes, you mentioned you talked about why you left the company, your brother's diagnosis, and everything else. But I often, we talk internally now, like XSP 1.0, because we have now moved on to the
exponential stock plan.
Yep.
So they mentioned that's the thing that shared the wealth
and made 100 plus people within the company millionaires. Did that? And I often say we talk about like other people have left, and by those people leaving, and actually I think about this all the time, you sort of clear the deck for new blood and new talent to sort of move up. Did you think about that when you were leaving?
Oh, absolutely. I'd been at Axon for, I worked at Axon for 15 years, and I do really feel like I was the right guy for the moment and the type of stuff that we needed, like tying some of these team things together in really difficult situations. I'd been a Marine officer in combat, so like I'm not losing any sleep over some of the office like tensions. It's like, okay, how do we get in there and figure this out? And so I felt really confident about that. But as I got closer to the age of 40, actually, I really felt like I would have been the guy that's just growing the company at 10% per year or whatever, where I think Rick talks about being a founder. He could take these massive $100 million, $200 million bets. And so I think it was 1,000,000% the right thing for the company. And it's been awesome to kind of cheer the company on as they've continued to grow and reach new heights.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk about it. We talked about it on the podcast, but all the time too. Like your biggest worry is we got bigger, we become more bureaucratic, and then we also get more comfortable. I mean, you've been there through the days where it was not very comfortable, not making any money personally, and the company is losing money as well. Like, and to have someone like Rick, like it is. I think about this all the time. Like he comes up with these crazy ideas, and the easy thing to do is say no. I mean, the easy thing is like, Rick, that's a crazy idea. We're not going to do that.
That's why sometimes they wait till you're out of the office to put the garage door in.
But I mean, but now it is hard, and I give Josh a lot of credit. Like he has organized the company, and he still pushes forward on the values that you sort of that you helped start here at the company. But like, if we did that, like it would not be the company. We would just be saying no to Rick all the time. He'd quit and leave. But like, it is hard not to say no. You know what?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think about like the companies that are the most impactful, you think about Apple or Tesla or Amazon, these all have founders that the company was 100% linked to that person's drive and motivation. And at Axon, that's 100% Rick. And the ability to span decades, you also have this vantage point where, he's seen an industry, he's built an industry, he's shaped an industry, and that allows him to, again, have these kind of founder powers where he can go all in. That founder's mindset is like coming in on the weekend, screwing together chairs.
Yeah, but when I would actually say Luke is also a founder, he was a founder of the reboot.
Yeah.
Taser to Axon. I would say also when you think about people's different strengths and weaknesses, like Luke is a 0 to 1 founder type.
Yep.
And that's where like, as the company began to scale and stabilize, that's where it's like, okay. And I actually think Josh is the right guy in the seat now, where Josh is, I would say, more built for managing really large teams and thinking through like the organizational issues that come with scale. And so I'm delighted. I know, Luke, I don't know if you want to talk about what you're doing now. You've kind of founded his own gig. Are we going to wait?
Yeah. I've got some fun projects that I'll talk about at a different day. But for Axon, I really did feel like we were building a company together. And for me,
we did.
Coming, I was like in my 20s and pretty early on got invited into the boardroom. So, I've seen leadership on the battlefield and the boardroom. And so it was really cool to be a young guy seeing, here's how the company works. Here's how you make decisions. A lot of late nights at Rick's house, where it was just the two of us wrestling with really tough decisions about people and capital allocation. And these are things that you can't really learn these in a book or a classroom. You got to learn it out in the real world. One kind of cool story about when we were building up Axon is we really wanted to get Axon.com because we were like a tech company and we wanted this like URL. And the Axon URL was actually owned by Axon TPG, which is like a hedge fund. They own like an airline and Red Lobster or something. I think I did have like a founder's mentality, which is, hey, we're going to go get it. I'm going to, people had tried to reach out to the guy and they couldn't get it. And I had the mindset, we're going to go get it. So I reached out to the guy. I said, hey, can we buy this URL? He's like, I'm not going to say yes or no, but I'll meet with you. So I fly to New York. I'm in a taxi cab right next to Central Park, heading to his office the day of, and his executive assistant calls me and she says, the meeting's off. I flew all the way to New York to meet with this guy and he cancels the meeting. And I'm just like so furious. And so, I come back and Rick's like, what's going on with the URL? And I'm like, the guy canceled the meeting and I'm kind of thinking we should just throw our hands up. And so I was super pissed. But I sent him an email back and I said, hey, look, we weren't able to meet, but here's the deal. We want this URL. How do we get it? And he sends me back this email and he said, look, I'm actually really sorry. My daughter has this medical condition and I had to go, take care of something. And that's why I canceled the meeting. I'm not an asshole. I'm actually a really great guy. And so I said, okay, cool. So I flew back out to New York and we met with him. And the deal we brokered is we actually donated money to his like daughter's medical condition, and that's how we got the Axon.com. Which, if you know, that's the kind of mindset you need to go out and say, hey, let's go get it and make it happen.
And that's an incredible story. And I mean, and also I don't think we talked about it enough, or really, I can't remember if we did in the prior 2 episodes. You're also the guy behind the Axon logo that we see everywhere in our videos. Is that right?
Well, I definitely had. I mean,
But the story internally is Luke Larson did it. So you.
Well, okay. So I think the story you're referencing is the Axon watermark.
The watermark. Yeah. Everybody. I mean, like, that's how my kids know us. That's how his friends think we're exciting, because you see all the police videos and it's got the Axon watermark up top. Like, that was brilliant.
Yeah. So we actually. I thought when we were designing the logo, we went with a firm out in Seattle, and we said, hey, we'd like to give you some options. And we had this idea of Rick really liked the delta meant change, this is change. And then we had some cool ideas to see, like, how could we make this look like a camera aperture was actually the first idea that we had. And it came back, and it actually, they were trying to make it look like a camera aperture, but it actually looked like a swastika. And so we said, we can't do this. This is not the logo for us. And so we morphed it over time, and we kind of softened it, and it ended up looking like the Axon nerve cell.
Yeah, so it's a delta sign for change, a nerve cell for Axon, and if you look at it, it's also like the camera apertures.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the story about the watermark is, and this is, I think, super relevant today with AI, and a big question is, how are we going to tell what's computer generated versus not computer generated? And so we had a couple different folks at the company who were saying, we have to figure out a way so we can show this is authentic. We had this hash mark, and kind of multiple people were talking about, how do we go one step further? And so we were like, when you see a PDF document, you see that PDF logo, and you know that it's secure. And so we wanted the equivalent of that for the Axon video. And so we said, let's put the Axon watermark on the video. It will be
the Axon logo. And look, I pushed back. I was like, Luke,
that's a dumb idea.
I think, I just think it's going to look like we're marketing ourselves on police. Like, they're not going to like us putting our logo on the video. He made the argument that, no, this is going to it'll show this is an official video. And I said, look, I think customers are going to throw up all over it, but all right, give it a shot.
But it's turned it to be I mean, you're talking about the watermark for security purposes, that you get trust as a police video. Well, did you think about it as a marketing thing?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I thought it would also show we've got this proliferation. I mean, you could see we talk about exponential curves. Once we had found product market fit and they started to use it, we quickly became one of the largest producers of data in the world, because people are filming hours of video, where Netflix has their like catalog, and they might add, a couple, 1,000 movies here or there. We're adding
more than YouTube.
10,000, videos a day.
We're up to a million.
Up to a million
a day now.
Wow.
1 million users uploading, and that's just the body cameras. And then we've got drones and fleet cars and all that.
And so, we had these moments where, again, people were saying, we want to know what happens in these scenarios. And so the idea to be able to show this is actually a credible video that's from Axon, where it's got this detailed audit chain.
All right, now you're selling too hard. This was like the great. I think he was running marketing at the time, or you just come out of that. But anyways, it's been brilliant marketing. And it did. Like, look, George Floyd.
Yeah.
Terrible incident. The world saw it because of the work we did, and the Axon logo up there, and it's on pretty much every police video you see on the news.
And he's justified. For sure. I don't mean to laugh over the George Floyd incident, but no, it was a brilliant marketing move. Like, I mean, you'd pay people millions of dollars to come up with that idea.
Well, and it's a win-win. I'm gonna like, customers have seen it, and the public now knows where the video came from.
Yeah.
So, like, the great thing about business, I'm an optimistic capitalist. Like, you look for win-win situations where the customer gets value and the company gets value, whether it's like we sell them something, we make a little profit, they get a new capability. This actually does really serve the other purpose. It is an imprimatur of authenticity, and it has become so socially pervasive that Grand Theft Auto has copied that in their new game. It's not our logo, but it's...
And I don't know, Luke, if you've seen other competitors now have copied this. Just in the past year or two. It took them a while, but now they're starting to put their logos on their videos as well. Started with Luke Larson.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 5 years in product, and I loved working in product. I loved working with the engineers particular. But then, when I moved up into the executive ranks, it was not what's the product that we're going to build. It was what's the company that we're going to build. And when I had joined Taser, they had this meteor rise, and they were a public company, but they were kind of playing catch up on some of their how do we create a great company? So I had this moment where I'd been at the company 5 years. I was still in product, and the HR department had a intern in the HR department, and they come over to my desk and they put a trophy that looks like somebody got 5th place in a singing contest in middle school, and it's got a post-it note with my name on it that says Luke Larson 5 years. And I almost quit that day. I almost walked out of the company because I'm like, I've worked here 5 years. I'm busting my ass. And we were still struggling. We're still failing. And I was like, this is just so terrible. And so I thought, you know what? If I ever get in a position where I can give recognition, we're going to make the recognition awesome. Mm-hmm. And so when I ended up being in, the HR department, the people department reported into me, the first thing I did is said, we're going to get rid of the participation trophies. We're going to make these awesome trophies. And so we actually made these trophies that looked like the Axon headquarters. Mm-hmm. And we started, and I'm not taking a hit at you. You had a lot on your plate, but this was one area where I think
it's not something Rick thinks about.
We really tried to up level the recognition. And I think they've actually evolved past the,
but I didn't know it started with you. No, we still do. It's a nice, beautiful.
Yeah, now it stacks and grows.
Stack it. I mean, could you imagine Steve Tuttle's stack is way up here? We've had Tuttle on here before, but I didn't know that started with you as well. And it means a lot. It means a lot to me, the one I have on my desk.
This isn't, tons of companies had done this. Actually, Hans Moritz, who was the guy, he had worked at Oakley. When we went to Oakley, they had these really cool recognition trophies. Do you remember that?
Yep.
They were from Predator. They were actually the alien from Predator, and they gave that out, and I thought that was really cool. So that was definitely an influence. The other thing that we did with recognition, and Rick actually really did an awesome job with recognition. We talked about the cash gifts and giving cars, but as the company scales, Rick can't go around and do that to 1,000 people.
Right.
So there's this moment where you have to say, how do we create systems at scale and can kind of take that culture and transfer it? And again, we had these gaps and air pockets here and there. But one thing that we did to
I'm not a system guy.
Systematize the awards is we created this award called the Aspire Award. And I don't know if that's still
absolutely.
And so we gave out these atrocious yellow jackets. Atrocious.
They have evolved.
Okay, I'd love to see what they're doing now. But that was a really cool moment. So we'd bring the people up.
Rick probably still likes those original jackets.
Yeah, what's wrong with those? I don't know what you guys are complaining about.
Yeah.
No, but it's still a big thing. And this is that's why I love Rick. Rick's all thinking about how to stop car pursuits, and he had ideas like, could you fly a drone? We called it the banana up the tailpipe idea. Could you fly a drone and shoot foam up the tailpipe, and that would shut the car down? Or there was a kamikaze drone idea. Could you fly a drone into a car and it would get underneath it and stop it? We want him doing those crazy things, and that's why, you and now Josh, recognition means a lot within a company, whether it's large, like a plate of cash that you did with Arvin, or something small. And even when you do employee surveys, it comes out near the top that people just want to be recognized for a job well done.
Yeah, one thing before we wrap with Luke, I'd love to talk. Did we talk about our corporate values?
Yeah, we did on episode 50.
Okay, great thing about being me is I can have the same conversation multiple times. It's just as interesting every time.
But what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to tell the story of how Luke led the effort.
Yeah.
What is so important in terms of cultural values, making it something that isn't something people laugh at, some stupid saying on the wall. I'll just show you.
What's he going to pull out?
These are brand new. Aim far, baby. I've got my shoes with the Aim Far logo on them. Luke led this effort, and I think we're best in the world. Amazon was best. They had values people live by. Luke took it and distilled it down at first I thought this was a waste of time. Like, oh God, corporate values is a process. But now, like, you hear it in every meeting. People are like, hey, is this winning right? You know, are you aiming far enough?
Yeah.
Are you boldly going? Are we taking risk?
Yeah. Okay. You've seen the shoes. These are brand new, by the way. Now, if you were wearing these shoes, and let's say you had black pants on, those are black shoes, and you had a black shirt on, what color socks would you wear, Luke, with that?
Black.
Black, right. That's what everybody else will wear. He gets on the plane Sunday when we're flying out here. I look at those shoes and I'm like, Rick, those are really nice shoes. And he goes, yeah, Josh got them for him because no one else has those. And he pulls his, sits down. And he's got on white ankle socks. I'm like, bro, like that is not the.
You got to say it like my kids. The new kids say, bruh.
Like it is. But that's Rick's fashion sense. We just laughed it off, and he didn't give a shit. So. He's got them on today.
Oh wow!
We're gonna get you
guilty. I ran out of dark socks on this trip.
Well, and yeah. If I think back to the because we've covered throughout the podcast like the history of Taser and Axon. As you said, we're going to write a book using AI and the transcripts. I sort of see the Taser years as Axon 1.0. Like Luke in the episodes we covered, like that's Axon 2.0. And I think with our conversation today, that in my mind, it's almost like Axon 3.0.
We're getting in that era. So, are there any stories that are just screaming to get out of you, Luke, that we haven't gotten yet?
He's told a lot of stories.
We have a lot. I mean, we worked together for 15 years, which was a pretty incredible journey, spanning lots of cool life moments. Let me think. I mean, we've had some fun. Again, I really appreciate that. Rick. Again, I think as the company grew, it's harder and harder to get ground truth, and so that was something where when we came and said, "Hey, how do we make the company better? How do we do this?" He was very receptive and also very rewarding to be a part of building that.
We can't end this with you polishing me like that. Come on, you got something better than glossy. Rick's a great guy.
Some of it's not safe for work.
Well,
that's true too.
Okay, Josh left.
We're all human.
We're all. I mean, I don't know if you listen to the prior episode, we talk about AI. Romantic evening. How about I say that?
I'd love to learn. I'd love to learn what's going on with the new building. Like what's happening with the new building.
So we've politics can get toxic. I've never seen anything as toxic as a zoning case. Just locally, people lost their minds over it. We had to go to the state to actually basically look. We need you to give us the zoning we need so we could build a campus. So when we recruit young people. Like when you first started, they're not ready to buy a house and live in the suburbs and they have a car and a dog and all that. People want to be able to live in a campus and walk to work. So we got that approved. We got a state law passed. And it's not just for us, for companies that bring high paying jobs can build campuses with apartments and things. So people can walk to work and reduce traffic and all that. So we're expecting, I'm not supposed to give a timeline, but sometime early next year, we think we'll be done with all of the tying off all the permits and things you need to break ground. And then hopefully we'll be moving in 2028.
2020. I mean, this talks about, again, this kind of founder's conviction and mindset. So I was in the room where it was really cool. I feel like I was in the room where it happens for a long time. And that was, we had a lot of talks about building the campus and getting all that set up. And now this is 13 years later. Even if you took the most complex building in the world, you should be able to build it within 5 years. And here we are 13 years later and you're still, pushing that, which is, I'm excited to see it. It should be
and why is it so important though? I mean, it's just not that we outgrew the space.
Well, I moved back to Arizona. I'd been living abroad before COVID hit. Then when COVID hit, I moved to Florida. But the thing and I thought, we may be in this remote world. But then you sort of realize, there's value to coming together. And the places we work are pretty special. Sitting here in our Tron office with Darth Vader's molten helmet. It's always important to me. And I think the buildings can be very influential culturally, like the science fiction vibe we have with people. And look, they can be iconic if you do it right. And so I had invested so much in the design of this. And even though we initially did it out on the Salt River reservation, And that was super frustrating because at the beginning we told them, hey, we're going to build a starship in the desert. It's not going to be beige and match the desert colors, which was their building codes. They say, yeah, no problem. One of the guys...
Right, you did hear that correctly. A starship almost like crashing into the desert. So
yeah, and one of the guys on the tribal council there had like a Star Wars t-shirt. And he's like, this is awesome. 2 years later, we come back with all the design and they're like, no, our building codes say it's got to like be beige and like fit in the desert. Seriously? So we had to move to a different location so we could build it. We had to go through a land auction. Then COVID hit and all sorts of craziness. But hey, you got to persevere. And so
you have persevered.
We
have personally persevered. No, but you have led that effort to get this building. Like it's going to be incredible.
When the building opens, I'm going to come see it. I saw the early architecture drawings and then kind of seeing the vision come to life. So it'll be exciting when it finally hits.
I'm a bit of a creator, man. Like
you
I'm in a point in life where you want to feel like you're building things that matter, and I'm kind of like that kid that wants to put their drawing from kindergarten on the fridge, you know.
I love that. Well, I think we all, also we've had Luke back 3 times. I think we could safely.
I think we've had enough, Luke.
Oh, that's not what I was going to.
No, I hear you.
I was actually going to say. I was going to say Luke's welcome back anytime. He's like a third co-host.
Yeah, no. I'd actually love. How are you guys' numbers doing? My mom said she watched the show 3 times, so
we saw her. She bumped our numbers materially.
Yeah.
Look, this is a fast-growing podcast. We're in the tens of listeners at least.
Yeah.
So there another cool story. We're jogging my memory on cool stories. So we would, as a public company, we do these earning calls, and earnings calls are normally like watching paint dry. Really the only thing people give a shit about is like, what was the top line? What was the bottom line? And so we tried to make ours more compelling to say, here's what the financials are, but also here's the narrative around the company that we're building. And we had this fantastic IR leader, investor relations, Andrew James, did a great job for us. And so we would really put a lot into these investor calls and do videos, which I think we were relatively new. Now I think more people do them, but we were new. We were kind of trailblazers in doing that. And we actually got some feedback. People were like, you can't do that. That's not the way it was done. And Rick and Andrew were like, let's try it. And so on one of these, it actually fell on the same day as my mom's birthday. And so, we're sitting there and I'm kind of on my phone and the CFO is like, what are you doing? You need to get your head in the game. I said, hey, look, it's my mom's birthday. I just remembered as an executive, you're busy. It's really important to me that I text my mom happy birthday, and I'm hoping I'm going to call her later.
Right.
And these guys are giving me crap, and I'm like, you know what? So we start the earnings call, and I say, hey, I'd like to give a shout out to my mom. It's her birthday. Happy birthday. And the finance folks were a little surly about it, and Rick was like, no, that's awesome. Like, that's super cool. And here's the crazy thing. We had a bunch of analysts come back and say, that was so cool. It really humanized the thing. Yeah. And I think that was a key theme. We were talking about Rick's dad and the influence that he had. And certainly for me, I felt that, we were working very closely together. But I think that, when you think about these other companies like Tesla with Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, where they're building these transformational breakthrough companies, but they kind of have they 100% have this reputation of chewing people up and maybe not treating people like humans sometimes and stuff. And that's not the case at Axon at all.
In terms of the work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
Like, just that there can be an expectation you sacrifice everything. And some of those companies have left a trail of broken marriages and broken families. And it's important to me. And I think culturally to us, that's not who we want to be. We have a really important mission. We're going to work hard. But we also want you to have fun, like get out of here. The Hooky Day, one of my favorite inventions. I started doing this when Kylie was in kindergarten. That every day I'm going to take a day off of work, pull my kid out of school, and it's just me and them because my wife is a stay-at-home mom and she gets to see the kids a lot, and they have probably a stronger relationship with her because of it. But I wanted it was just me and just one of my kids, and I've got twins, so it made a big difference there. They're pretty interactive with each other, so to get one-on-one time, and I'm glad Luke's doing it, and I've shared that, and that is a sacred thing at Axon. Unless you have more than like 10 kids, there's probably some limit. You can take one day off with each kid each year and go bond with them.
I introduced Rick a lot, from our customers. I used to introduce him as like the Steve Jobs of public safety or the Elon Musk of public safety, which he didn't like. But
those are big shoes to fill. I hold those guys. I'm not on their level.
But you're also not. You just mentioned it. You're not those guys in terms of the personality and sort of driving people to ruin marriages and you.
Well, that's not why I said it. I have ultimate respect for those guys. So
Yeah.
I said it because like I am
love
not
you.
on that level as much as
You want to be the love child between Elon Musk and Richard Branson. You've said that many
Yeah,
times.
that's true. I would merge those two.
I think it's more about doing it your way. Like, what is your way? And your way was to have a really creative, high performance culture that I think, people like me and Josh help you achieve that goal, but then also, communicate to folks. We don't want you missing a wedding anniversary, a kid's birthday, stuff like that. You should. Those are the most important things, and that came from the top, from Rick. Before I get the hook here, there one other kind of key theme that I think back on my time at Axon was this idea of just like leading from the front and being in the field. And Rick doesn't live in Boston. He's here, holding a meeting, and we would travel a lot, especially for international. And so, you've heard a lot of great stories about Luke Larson. One of my biggest failures was we were trying to open up international, and Rick had said, "Hey, Luke, take the reins on international." As a young, ambitious guy, I thought, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to figure out how to open up Brazil. And so we went to Brazil 15 times. We were trying to open up the Brazil market before they had the Olympics and the World Cup, and we thought this would be a great market to get tasers and body cameras in there. And so, I put a lot of energy into traveling down there, and we had this guy, Yuri, who we talked about. Yuri's like key character in the Axon story, but Yuri and I went down into Brazil, and we're trying to tell them about these body cameras and stuff. And there's a little bit of a language barrier. They speak Portuguese, and maybe our interpreter only spoke Spanish. So it was a little stressful. So we're deep into the, not Amazon, but we're deep into a Brazilian city. We're in, not Brasilia. We took a plane to Brasilia and then went down to another city south. And we're trying to set this thing up. And these guys, they have guns, and they're like the boat bay and like Navy SEAL level dudes, and they have these guns and they're yelling at us, and me and Yuri are just sitting there like totally petrified. But that's a great memory I have with Yuri. But getting back to just like the kind of failure that we saw in international, I think one of the things that we were trying to do is we were trying to enter the market like every other company. And one thing that I think we came back and learned is we need to go out and find people that believe in Axon's values, that believe in what we're doing. And so we kind of, when Josh took over international, we kind of switched our approach from let's go hire some big suit to let's get somebody that is, has the Axon DNA, has the values.
Yeah, missionary.
And that was where the international market totally flipped for something where it was kind of a dog for us, really. And now I don't know what the percentage of sales is, but I think it's actually a meaningful part of the Axon portfolio. And more importantly, I see these international guys, and they're wearing the Axon jersey.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all in.
You should go to the Vietnam office. Like it is. You probably have when you were still. It is incredible to see those guys in Vietnam. Well, if we don't wrap this up, I'm going to miss an important family thing because I've already blew through 2 flights doing this one. I have to get to the airport.
No way.
So
all right, get out of here.
But Luke, you flew in just for this. So I want to thank you for coming in for another episode. Hopefully, get some time, see some people around the office, but really appreciate you coming in for this episode. And Rick, I'll let you take us out of here.
It's been quite a ride, man. Thank you for leading the charge that saved the camera business, that turned Taser into Axon, and I miss working with you every day.
I'm on Team Axon for life. I'm still wearing the colors, so if you guys ever need anything, throw up the bat signal.
We're going to have you over here when you go public with your new venture.
Thanks so much. I think we're going to wrap up this episode. We've covered a lot, been really exciting, and we're going to come back next week and continue the conversation.
Let's boldly go.